Hi everyone. Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame tends to get one of two receptions from Disney fans and the general public. Some people were going to hold it in the highest regards as one of the Disney classics. Others think it's something that shouldn't have been attempted or doesn't mesh well overall. But what do I think of it? Well, let's begin with the story. Similarly to many Disney films, even their classic fairy tales, Hunchback comes from a very dark place as the beginning, and thanks to the internet, I am familiar with a lot of it. I never read the original novel, so I'm not going to compare it too much, but I will say, yeah, they cleaned it up. Quasimodo being alive, as well as a general happier ending, and of course, it's a Disney movie, and honestly, by now you should be used to that. The Fox and the Hound and Little Mermaid both have far happier endings than their source material, but this is a movie that really gets the flack, probably because of how the other book is considered such a masterpiece of literature. But is the story still decent itself? Yes, we still have a good story here. A lot of it is due to the characters and some willingness to go into darker territory. Well, as I said before, it doesn't go into this territory as dark as the original novel would, of course. It still is a noticeable and significantly more adult Disney movie. Here we have themes that appear such as real bullying of others because of how they look, cruelty, genocide, religious corruption, and how, and basically witch trials too. There is so much here that you wouldn't expect in a Disney film that actually makes it pretty fascinating and interesting to watch. So Quasimodo wants to go to the festival and spend one day out of his bell tower, but his cruel master Frollo refuses to let him and tells him that it's a dark place. The world is dark and cruel and wicked, and he must stay in the bell tower or he'll be safe from it. But when Quasimodo does go down to the festival and is bullied and harassed and has thrown at him right after he has his one shining moment as the King of Fools, Esmeralda, a beautiful gypsy woman, saves him, therefore angering Frollo, who goes mad with obsession with her and lust and burns down all of Paris to get to her. So, like I said, way darker than anything Disney has attempted in themes. Sure, Disney has done dark imagery in several movies before this, from Pinocchio and the Black Cauldron to The Headless Horseman, but their themes are usually a sense of good versus evil and nothing to this level. Like, instead of having realistic scenarios, we have a character that's a mustache twirling greedy character, or a character that's dark and mythological. But we'll get into that more for characters. And the movie has a great message of inner beauty and how a real monster isn't based on looks but rather what's inside, similarly to how Beauty and the Beast another Disney film at the same time in France. But I think this one goes even further than that film, because here we see just how much the world tends to treat anyone that's different, as opposed to having Quasimodo be completely separate. We see him try and at first fail to interact with everyone around him. And yeah, it is really dark and depressing, but that works to the film's advantage. Now, some people have a problem for comedic tones to it, but I think as a whole it doesn't really take away from this story too much. But I could see how that could be a problem, and that with having light moments, some people might think that it undermines the darkness of the story as a whole and that it doesn't mesh well. But I honestly think, as far as a Disney Hunchback movie would go, it does work, and I don't think that the light elements hurt the movie too much, as much any more than, say, Timon and Pumbaa ruined the dramatic parts of The Lion King, for example, or Mushu takes away from dark elements of Mulan. And again, I'm going to get into that when we get into characters more. On to the animation. More so than other Disney films, this Disney movie really has its settings be the real center point of the visual wonder. Notre Dame itself is huge and amazing, and the film makes sure to take time for you to appreciate it. We see angle shots all over the cathedral, as well as scenes of moving up to it closer, like nice close-ups in the beginning and zooming in, as well as every setting in this movie. Sometimes there's even a bit of a first-person shot, like when Phoebus first meets Frollo, we see his hand reaching for a door, but we're not seeing his face, we're seeing what he would be seeing, which is definitely a nice way of getting into a setting. Every landscape in this movie is amazing, even ones that are supposed to be creepy, like the catacombs and sewers to get to the Cour Des Miracles. It's amazing, and some of the dark imagery in this movie also really works, especially during the Hellfire sequence or towards the end when Notre Dame starts to come alive in a sense and defeat Frollo, which I'm not going to say exactly how. I am going to say defeat Frollo, though, because he's a Disney villain. He's not going to win. Disney's never going to go that dark, as far as I know. But the animation here really is just so breathtaking with its visuals, and has some nice realistic animation on the humans, but also does its cartoon elements with the gargoyles well, and they do feel like they're separate from everything else with the way they're designed, and they're a bit more cartoony, but at the same time you could say that for the characters as a whole. So they really feel otherworldly, and that's okay because they really are supposed to be the one element of fantasy in this very real world. Now onto the characters. Quasimodo, I feel, is a great Disney hero for many reasons. One, he starts off awkward and afraid because of how his master treats him. And a lot of times he doesn't act like a typical male one does, and his arc is somewhat similar to that of the princesses, I'm not saying he's a princess, so no wisecracks, please. But in the sense that he wants to go off and see the world, but a cruel figure is really stopping him from following his dreams, and that really, other than some physical strength that he how easily can carry Esmeralda and other scenes of physical strength breaking chains, his real asset is his kindness and his love for all those around him. The very first scene we see of adult Quasi, he's convincing a little bird who was presumably injured or too small to fly before to take a chance and fly, and it's such a sweet moment, and it's definitely one that establishes who he is as a character, and I can really appreciate how it's done and how heartwarming it is to see. It's just so cute, and he's so lovable and relatable that he really does work as a subversion of typical Disney heroes. Esmeralda is a very strong heroine too, and she has plenty of physical strength and wits to get through something, but she's also, like Quasimodo, a very compassionate person and is the first person to show him kindness. But she also is clever enough to figure out her way out of a situation from the like she does in the festival, and has plenty of courage. She will not show any fear to Frollo or go along with what he says or do as he commands her just because of his power, which makes her really admirable. Phoebus is another great character. So many times in a Disney movie, the Disney villain has henchmen that are just as awful as they are or almost as bad. Here we have Phoebus, a good man who's in a situation where he's forced to follow orders of someone that is terrible and evil. He quickly shows discomfort at Frollo's ideas and thinks that gypsies do deserve the same rights as everyone else does, and he shows kindness to Esmeralda early on and goes against his own men to become kind to her and make sure she gets the money that she earned dancing. And he does try multiple times to get Frollo to show a bit more sympathy and mercy and to stop his evil doings. But when that finally does fail, he decides to go against Frollo at risk of his own life. So, yeah, another great character. And then we have our villain, Frollo. Frollo is one of the hardest Disney villains to really talk about. In some respects, he's one of the great ones. He's by far one of the cruelest, if not the absolute most evil, which I would consider him to be. He kills an innocent woman, threatens to drown a baby within the first 5 minutes, and he's willing to burn down a whole city to get to Esmeralda. He shows lust, not like Gaston's obsession with Belle, clear lust, and that's really encompassed very well with him, and it's very clear his exact thoughts. Not marriage or anything like that, or date. Straight up, not G-rated stuff. And It's a wonder they got away with a G rating with all of this, which is mostly because of who I'm going to mention after Frollo. So, he is all those things, but he also is one of the very few delusional Disney villains. Most Disney villains eagerly say how rotten they are. Maleficent calls herself the mistress of all evil. Ratigan says he loves it when he's nasty. And Ursula, Cruella, Hook, they all delight in how rotten they are to people. Frollo definitely does delight in causing torture, but there's one thing that makes him different from every other villain. He thinks he's in the right. I'm not saying it like how you could say that any villain in a movie sees himself as the good guy if you see it from their point of view. It's outright stated that he sees himself as the good man and pious and righteous, which makes him all the more threatening. Of course, he is so uncomfortable to watch that many people will either put him as their top favorite Disney villain for the realism, or they'll put him farther to the bottom, or like my mother, hate the movie because of him and how realistic he is. Which, for me, I say he is one of the most realistic and well-written villains, but I don't enjoy him as much as Ursula because of how horrible he is. And his fangirls, don't get me started there. Do not. So now, on to the last characters that are really worth mentioning, the Gargoyles. I say them to last because these are a real debatable group of characters. People either love or hate these guys. I can see both sides. They definitely do have their funny moments, and it was a good idea to have Quasimodo have somebody to talk to so he's not just completely alone for his scenes, especially when he's about to go to the festival and there wouldn't be anyone to talk to or convince him to go or how to convey his emotions. And that is an important part, and they do get some good lines, but at the same time, some people can find them really out of place, not just because of the fantasy element, but also because this really isn't a comedic movie as a whole, other than some moments here and there. So that could be a real problem for some people. I think that they aren't really that much worse than Timon and Pumbaa or Mushu, like I said before. But at the same time, another issue is how it's handled, and there are moments when it's not handled as well. For example, when Esmeralda is comforting Quasimodo, and then they make a joke about Frollo's nose as long as he wears a dress, which is funny, but might not be the best time. And also, their number, A Guy Like You, comes up right after Phoebus has been shot, even though it's a really catchy number and shows how much they care for Quasi. It definitely can come as off-putting. So there are moments when they are funny, but there's also ones when maybe they aren't the best part of the film. I like them, but I can definitely see why people have a problem. And going off of I Got Like You, let's talk about the other songs. This is one of Disney's best and most underrated scores. Sure, The Lion King is awesome with its music, but this movie needs so much more recognition. Starting with The Bells of Notre Dame, one of the best Disney openings in my opinion. It's big, it's epic, it poses the question of the monster and man, as well as showing how cruel Frollo really is, and it really shows the dark beauty of this movie, as well as having a sense of grandiose as the cathedral itself. Then there's Out There, probably the best Disney I Want More song, up with Part of Your World, maybe. Just so much that we want to see him succeed with Quasimodo, as well as Frollo's from the beginning, trying to install fear into him, and just seeing his one dream of finding more, and that he doesn't need anything else except this, which is such a little thing to ask for. Then there's Topsy Turvy, the other little fun number. It's a cute one with a catchy number beat, and is a nice party song. Nothing as great as the other ones, but still pretty good. God Help the Outcast is another great one. One of the very few religious songs in a Disney movie, up with another one from this very movie that's on a darker side. This is a lighter side and a prayer for all the others, and shows Esmeralda's character and how she cares more about others than herself, even though she's in a terrible situation. And it's just so beautiful, like a prayer, and lovely. And then there's Heaven's Light and Hellfire, a nice dual piece, starting off with a light showing of actual love and caring for another person, Quasimodo's for Esmeralda, and then we see the dark side, and probably my favorite Disney villain song, Hellfire, from Frollo. Oh boy, it's so dark, and the very fact that they got away with it in a Disney film, lust, threatening, the idea of be mine or burn, all of that makes for a song that's so impressive with what it got away with and how dark it was willing to go, that I can really admire it for it. Then there's the Cour Des Miracles, which is another song that is pretty dark, and it shows a darker side to Clopin, who before is really jocular and friendly, but at the same time, we see with that with the gypsies that they are that way for a reason, but they are very protective of their home, which is understandable, and really goes into the whole ambiguity of morality for this movie. So, Hunchback of Notre Dame is a really underrated Disney movie, in my opinion. There's those that place on a high pedestal, and I'm one of them. I really am one of those people. The animation, story, characters, and music are all fantastic. Definitely worth checking out. And as always, if you have an anime film you want me to review, please leave it in the comment section below. And until then, see you later.